Bond 26 could be make or break for 007, but get it right and Amazon will secure Bond's future for years to come. But what do they need to do to keep Bond alive for the next generation? Well, in this video, I am going to do my very best to answer that exact question. Roger Moore never tried to play James Bond the same way as Sean Connery, but all the same, he still felt like he was James Bond. He made the role completely his own, and although he approached the role in a completely different way to his predecessors, it didn't matter at all. Whereas Sean Connery emptied his magazine into the back of Professor Dent in Dr. No, Roger Moore wanted to play a Bond who was more careful about who he killed, reluctant to kill anybody unless it was absolutely necessary. His charm, his wit, his single raised eyebrow all came together to give Moore a unique take of his own on Bond, one that was still authentically 007. In fact, with every single actor who stepped into Bond's shoes, there's been a degree of reinvention. So that tells us something important. Bond can and does evolve, but stray too far from the core and audiences will struggle to accept the change. The right actor is just part of the equation though. So let's look at what else Amazon has to get right. By the way, before we get into that, if you're interested in my monthly Bond newsletter, you can sign up using the link in the description below. Personally, I think the best Bond films are those that are closely based on Ian Fleming's stories, but there's not much Fleming material left, and unless they decide to remake some of the films or they decide to adapt one of the continuation authors, then it's going to be an original story. A good Bond film lives and dies by its script, but Amazon can't afford the third act stumbles that plagued all of the Daniel Craig films except Casino Royale. There's something else too. Less frequent releases over the last 2 decades and an aging fan base mean they need to attract younger fans on board too. So they'll need to update the formula to make Bond relevant to a younger audience without alienating older fans. So the first step towards developing that script is to nail the story. They don't need to develop the whole script at the moment, but once they have the story in place, they'll be in a position to hire a director. The director needs to be somebody who understands the Bond franchise. They also need to know how to evolve it without straying too far from its roots. Yes to vodka martinis, yes to Aston Martins, but as long as they're not invisible. After Casino Royale, Eon decided to go with auteur directors rather than the more workmanlike directors that the series had long relied upon. People like Terence Young, Guy Hamilton, John Glenn, Martin Campbell, and Peter Hunt, I suppose, too. But Bond doesn't need auteur directors. They inhabit their own space within cinema. They are their own genre, almost. And they need someone who can tell a tight story and thrill us along the way. Just do the job, but do it well. Alfonso Cuarón is one director who has been frequently linked to Bond 26 recently, and I think there's a strong possibility that he may be chosen because of his links to producer David Heyman. I'm not familiar enough with his work to know whether he is a good candidate or not, but I will say that Gravity, which was directed by him, wasn't my cup of tea at all. Someone else often mentioned in the same sentence as Bond is Christopher Nolan, but I'm not sure that his style of filmmaking is really a good fit with Bond. So when they've got a strong storyline and they've got a director on board, it's time to really develop the script and time to flesh out the characters that are going to inhabit the new film. It goes without saying that there will be a villain in a Bond film, somebody with a dastardly plan that Bond has got to foil, but there's a bit of a problem with the modern era. The Daniel Craig villains were, by and large, pretty underwhelming. I think part of that is that so much of our lives are lived online these days, and real-life villains are often invisible to us. Anyway, getting the details of the villain's evil scheme right are key to nailing the villain. Bond 26 needs to have a strong female lead, but it can't be somebody that Bond is going to settle down with. The last really good Bond girl was Vesper, and while Paloma was great in No Time to Die, her role was far too minor. But this is one area the scriptwriters need to tread carefully. It's a balancing act between getting it right for established Bond fans, as well as younger fans who have grown up in a world that is very different to the 1960s, 70s and 80s. As Phoebe Waller-Bridge said, and I am paraphrasing here, although the Bond films must treat women well, Bond himself doesn't have to. Daniel Craig's first 2 Bond films were fine without Moneypenny and Q, but after reintroducing them in Skyfall, they were massively overused, as were M and Tanner. They were always supposed to be bit parts, familiar faces whose appearance on screen could be counted in seconds. So let Moneypenny summon Bond to M's office. Let's give him his mission briefing, and then along to Q for some gadgets. Then send Bond somewhere exotic and put all those characters in storage until the next film. One plot device that has been way overused during the Daniel Craig era is making every mission personal and at some point him going off rogue. Maybe that's 2 plot devices, but you know what I mean. Anyway, Bond had gone rogue in the past a few times, but the Daniel Craig era is just one long chain of personal missions where he has to, at some point or other, operate independently of MI6. So, no backstory this time. No vendettas. No rogue agents. Just Bond, his mission, and the cold thrill of espionage. Don't forget about the newsletter if you're interested, and thanks for watching.